Hey, welcome back, everybody, to BackTrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and when I see what's going on in the world today, I'm like Tamark. The river Tamark. Seriously, guys. I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
Hey, I'm Gooey Fame. Shaka when the walls fell.
Oh, I hope not. We're a part of the Just Enough Trope podcast network, which is home to many shows about your favorite topics like TV shows, films, comic books, video games, anime, music, and more. You can find out more by going to justenough.trope.com or by following @JustEnoughTrope on Twitter. Keep the geek fires burning. Well, here we are, episode 21. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good today. Feeling pretty jazzed. It's Thursday. Picard's out, so
yeah, that's a new thing to look forward to this year on Thursdays. I'm doing okay. Just feeling real harried. I just got a lot of stuff going on. Not Harry Kimmed, but things are happening. Things are popping off.
Oh, I'm sure Picard means more work for you. So
yeah, but like we just established, it's fun.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to say real fast before we talk about the news. Actually, this is a little bit of news. I don't know if you heard that Blumhouse, the company that does a lot of these horror movies these days, is going to do an adaptation of the full novel that The Thing was based on.
Oh, okay.
Which we talked about last week, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess that's interesting. They've got some good stuff. They've got some not good stuff lately, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we talked about all the different adaptations of The Thing before, like the X-Files episode or the 50s movie or whatever, I don't know if we really ever established what aesthetic works the best, like really going for it or just doing it on a shoestring budget, like how are we going to get this done, And like Blumhouse's model is like throw $8 million at it and we'll see it when it comes out, you know what I mean? Right. I think there's a lot of creative freedom, but sometimes it's not. I mean, I definitely think that we're not going to have the elaborate special effects that you saw in the John Carpenter Thing one, which were done on a shoestring budget, but still managed to look great thanks to Rob Bottin.
Yeah, maybe we talked about the potential of like what other forms that movie could take. So, yeah. I think there's some potential there. So,
and I'm not sure what it means exactly that they are doing. They're adapting it specifically from Who Goes There. Like if there's whoever did The Thing before, like still owns The Thing technically, or if this is a way to like get around that, or what it's going to be like.
Oh yeah, never thought about that. I wonder how much the story really varies, or I don't know if there's something from that they specifically want to take. I don't know. I
read a synopsis online, and I think a lot of the specific. When we were talking about The Thing, like a synopsis of the book, I think a lot of the specifics are the same, like the blood test and them worrying about, the alien getting away or like being able to contact the mainland. But then, of course, like John Carpenter's kind of like post-hippie sort of, character in Kurt Russell's character and just sort of like that sort of aesthetic is, I think, what he put on it. So it'll be interesting to see like what a 2020 version of that looks like.
Yeah, we'll probably see some more modernized characters for sure.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. There's a blogger. He's blogging about. There's a podcaster. That's what
Windows is now a blogger.
Yeah, he's like, I gotta get my podcast out there.
I gotta post.
Wilfred Brimley, stop destroying my Zoom recorder. Yeah, that's what it'll be. Speaking of pop culture, I want to do a pop in. That's what it's called. A pop culture check-in, now known as a pop-in with you.
Oh, I like it. Okay.
There's dust on my Switch because I've been so busy. I haven't been able to really play video games, and when I do, I've been playing like Doom because you can you just turn it on, you just kill a bunch of demons, and then it's like gotta go, put it down. It doesn't matter what the story is.
Yeah,
big deal.
That's a good game for that.
What have you been playing?
On Switch, actually, kind of a similar vein as that. Not the style of game, but just I can play this for 20 minutes. Is this game called Hollow Knight? I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Yeah, so it's like this Metroidvania game where you're going through this big connected world and unlocking power ups and stuff like that. And so what's good about it is you can pretty much quit to the menu whenever you want, and it takes you back to the last checkpoint and saves it automatically, and refills your health or whatever, which I've kind of abused at times. But the checkpoints aren't too far away from wherever you're going, so it doesn't feel like, lost progress. So it is fun to just play, even if I have just a little bit of time. It's like, oh, maybe I'll chip away at this one route I was going down and uncovering the map of. It's a lot of fun, and the combat is great and fluid, and you get a bunch of cool abilities, so I highly recommend it.
I heard that a sequel to that was coming out soon.
Yeah, I think this year there's going to be one, so if I finish it before then, it's not a long game, but the way I'm playing it is, so.
Yeah. Me getting the Switch has definitely opened the doors for me to getting a lot of simpler, easy to pick up and put down, like Metroidvania type games. Like I'd marked Dead Cells as a possible buy on every digital platform I had on like computer or PS4 or whatever. And then I got the Switch and I finally pulled the trigger, and that's another game that I'm able to sort of pick up real fast and just play it and see how far you can get. Like, death is not a big deal. Death is all part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. If it's like you kind of accepted that, like, I'm gonna die, so there's times in Hollow Knight where it's like, I'm gonna die, and they kind of have like a Dark Souls like death mechanic where you gotta you'd lose some of your stuff, but if you get back to where you died and like beat the shadow version of yourself, you get your stuff back.
But that's the encouragement to like keep playing then. Like,
but I'm also like, if I'm heading back to it and I'm like about to die or something, I'll be like, you know what? I'll stop because I'll come back and I'll like have my health back.
It's saved there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a good balance, I think.
Like before this, I was playing the Resident Evil 2 remake, and you do the thing where you beat the boss or you're on the way to a boss, and then you save it, and you go, could I have like done that more efficiently? Maybe I should go back and do that again. Or like, I just saved it, now I'm going to wander around, get killed, and then know where everything is, and then I'll reload it from there. And like when my girlfriend's watching me, she's like, just go through the game. Why do you keep trying to like do all this horse trading with the saves? And I'm like, you don't understand. That's how you play the game.
Hey, not unlimited typewriter ink, so you can just go ham.
Right. Well, okay, that was fun. That was a little pop in there. I wanted to check in with you on if you're watching Star Trek Picard.
Yeah, I watched so far the first episode, and after we're done recording, I'm probably going to go home and watch the second one. So,
yeah, sure.
So yeah, I liked the first one a lot. We did a little bit of conversing about it on your show Discoverage. Thanks for having me on.
A totally organic plug, which I don't know when this will come out, but every Thursday this winter while the show's on, we'll be doing live episodes at around 7 or 7:30 p.m. We used to do live coverage of Discovery episodes. So, they'd come out around 7. We'd record around 8. But, of course, Picard just comes out at midnight because this is the future. And so we decided just 7 p.m. Central Time, we go live. And you can find us on Twitter at EISTpod. I've been reading the Countdown comic book, which is written by Kirsten Beyer, one of the writers and creators of Picard. And it's like a story about Picard 10 years before, or 10, maybe 20 years before. He's commanding a ship that's not the Enterprise, and he's trying to get the Starfleet evacuation effort going. And it's about him finding this world where he's ready to evacuate the Romulans, and then he finds out that the Romulans have essentially like a slave class working on the planet, and they're like, no, don't worry about them. And he's like, no, we got to take these guys. And they're like, we're not bringing these guys. And so he kind of comes to loggerheads with them over this issue. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together until I started watching Picard, but there are 2 Tal Shiar characters, 2 Romulans in the comics who turn out to be the Romulans who are his like housekeepers and cook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Because I remember we had a question about that on the Discovered show, and then also I've seen people online asking who they are, but not a spoiler. They meant for you to know that, but yeah, they are definitely making connections there in the story.
That's cool. I sort of presumed, I guess, that they were saved by him because they seem very, fond of Picard. So I presume that. So that's cool. That's cool to get some more backstory on them. Yeah. I'm liking it. I watched when we talked about it, it was like right after I had seen it, and I was a little unsure. And then I had watched the episode again, and it clicked with me a little bit more. Even some of the things I was confused about, or like some of the things I had problems with, I was like, oh, actually, this is I just like maybe missed something, you know. So I've kind of clicked in with the first episode, and I'm hoping that, you know, it continues to be interesting and good.
I've already watched some of the second episode, and it totally solves that problem that we had talked about on the show, which is the first episode ends, and you're like, "What?" Like there wasn't like a cliffhanger. You know, we've got all these unanswered questions, and the second episode immediately hits the ground running and starts to fill in some of those blanks.
Ooh,
so
okay,
they should have just done a 2-hour thing. I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah, I mean,
it's streaming. You know, they got to stretch this out.
Yeah, they already would do that before, and now they have no limitation. So.
Yeah, I know. It's the future. I told you. Well, let's get into our featured subject for today's show. Tribalism in human interaction was an instinct that was extremely useful in our early development. After all, you had no way of knowing if the caveman coming over the hill was a friend with new ideas about hunting or a cannibal looking for his next meal. After we settled down as a species, though, the instinct to be tribal has persisted as one of those annoying vestigial throwbacks like your appendix or wisdom teeth. Everything's going fine until your mouth aches or that little bit of your large intestine is threatening to kill you. We claim to want peace and prosperity, but every time we meet someone unfamiliar, they're clearly the source of all of our problems, and we have to kill them and take all their stuff. Fiction has long been interested in telling stories about two groups not getting along and how they get around it, and with the advent of sci-fi, that premise found new worlds to explore. It's great that Earth has found relative peace and is taken to the stars, but wouldn't you know it, there's a bunch of lizard guys out there ready to screw everything up for us. It looks like intergalactic war. But what if those two combatants could be removed, two individual ones from the conflict, and forced to survive both on a hostile alien world and their own prejudices about the other? That's the theme of a 1985 movie called Enemy Mine.
Marooned on a desolate planet, he is a soldier, alone with his enemy.
Don't you understand English, toad face? I don't love you and you don't love me. We're stranded here, you understand?
His suspicion will change to tolerance.
You saved my life. Why?
I need to look at another face, even as ugly as yours.
Tolerance will lead to friendship.
We should open up a little place here. I could ruin the food. You could scare away the customers.
And with that friendship will come an overwhelming responsibility.
You must be a parent.
Don't kid around, Jerry.
You must take my place.
Protecting a life he values more than his own. Dennis Quaid, Louis Gossett Jr., Wolfgang Petersen's Enemy Mine.
Did you have any experience with Enemy Mine before this?
No, I had no idea what to expect. I had just seen, you know, when we talked about it, looked at the cover.
Yeah.
I was like, this looks wild.
Yes.
Like, I was like, even before watching it, I was like, how does this exist? You know?
And that cover is kind of a sticking point. I had actually never watched this until now for this show, but I basically knew everything about it. It was one of those, I don't know, I used to read like the Leonard Maltin. He used to publish books of reviews where he just basically tells you what happens in a movie. So I like knew about it, but I was researching the movie for this show, and I learned that they went like hard on this. Like they really Fox really wanted to push this as a big thing, because the 80s, you know, there's a lot of crazy sci-fi in the 80s. And so they really did this huge marketing thing. They set up this, they called it like a network roadblock, where they ran television commercials for the thing, and they scheduled it so basically like anybody watching a TV at a certain time on this day, it would be like a president's address. You would see this commercial for Enemy Mine. And a lot of people criticized just the huge push, the amount of money they spent, but also this poster, which looks like the cover of like a 70s or 60s sci-fi book. It looks like epic, but it doesn't. It just looks like it's going to be like this all-out battle, and it doesn't tell you anything about like the heart or the tenderness that you find in the story.
Yeah, and which I kind of like that. I kind of like that it's because it is meant to sort of be a twist on the arena in a way.
It's kind of the anti-arena, yeah.
So it's kind of, I think it's kind of cool that it, you just at first glance, it's like, oh, this looks like these two guys are about to go to town. Yeah, I mean, it's a very, it looks like a promo flyer for like a pay-per-view,
Yeah, right. Tonight, Enemy Mine, AEW. It's based on a 1979 novel, or actually a novella by a guy named Barry B. Longyear, and it actually won the Hugo for Best Novella in 1980. So, if this is not like a newish premise or story, but he put it in the stars, he wrote a novella, it won an award, got turned around into a movie pretty fast. And in shooting the movie, the final actual director of the film was Wolfgang Peterson, who's directed The Neverending Story, a bunch of other films. But it actually started with a different director originally, a guy named Richard Loncraine. And they were going to shoot it in Iceland and Budapest. And it was going to be basically the same movie, but they just weren't getting what they wanted. Like the costume, the Louis Gossett Jr. costume didn't look good. The sets didn't look really good. Like it looked, I guess they shoot a lot of things in Iceland these days, but it just looked like Earth. None of it really worked. And so they basically just went, all right, move along. We got to turn this thing around really fast. Brought Wolfgang Peterson in, redesigned the costume. Peterson did Das Boot as well. That's probably what he's best known for.
Oh, okay.
And just everybody put their heads together and turned this thing out in like a couple months, and then flipped it around, and boom, you got a movie. And so we don't know how much it actually cost. It made $12 million at the box office, not a lot. And the posted budget is $29 million, but it could have cost like up to $40 million with restarting it. Like so Justice League, how like Justice League. Oh, it's $200 million. Is it, or is it like $500 million?
Right.
They had to
it's
do
like,
it twice.
Is it a movie on top of a movie?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Wow.
And I think what they came up with was pretty good. I was thinking about this movie and how there are parts of it that look really great, not like necessarily believable or modern, but in that like classic. Like Forbidden Planet, when we talked about Forbidden Planet.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like
where you're like, wow, they made that. You can tell it's not real, but you're kind of impressed at the artistry.
It's not a planet, but it's a work of art. Sometimes literally because of all the matte paintings and stuff. But then there's other things like the technology, the little plastic helmets they wear. It feels a lot like a TV show, like an episode of Galactica 1980 or something.
Right, yeah, it does veer back and forth between like beautiful to like, oh, like,
yeah.
I kind of loved it because I love both of those types of things.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, even though maybe it wasn't intentional, I just, whatever I was looking at, I usually enjoyed it, There's the parts on the planet, which is where most of the film is, that are very 60s like Star Trek episode or something. And then we go back to the space station, and there's like a real 2001 kind of feel, like a 70s sci-fi. We're on a space station. And then the end is like straight up 80s action movie. All 80s action movies have to end in a factory with steam and chains and stuff like that. Yeah. There was like 2 movies in this movie.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, more than 2 probably. Yeah.
I thought you could have like made 2 movies out of this, but considering the whole story that they're telling here, it makes sense. It's like this epic, story of this guy.
Yeah. This guy, Davidge, played by Dennis Quaid, who people now probably just know him as like the insurance guy. But
yeah,
Dennis Quaid was huge in the 80s. Dennis Quaid was the Chris Pratt of the 80s.
Oh, I can totally see that, actually.
He was in these movies where there was action and usually sci-fi, and you needed like a comedic side. You needed a guy that could like sell a joke or just go like, I don't know what's going on here. He was in Inner Space and Dreamscape and films like this. Yeah. He was like totally filled that role in the sort of mid-80s.
Oh, so is this a view into like Chris Pratt's future?
Selling insurance, maybe. I don't know.
Or we'll be like, oh yeah, that insurance guy, he used to be like a big deal.
What is Chris Pratt's future? What's he working on now? I guess they got Guardians 3 coming, but yeah.
Dennis Quaid does have like he's got the range in this movie, I think. He goes from like funny to endearing, and like even in the beginning when they're doing like the battle scene, like his facial expressions and his like yelling and screaming is like disturbing. It's like almost like bloodthirsty craven, you know, like I don't know if they meant for that, but it was upsetting. But then like he wins you over in a way throughout the movie.
He's totally going for it. Yeah, because they could have just said right off the bat, even if they want to turn the movie into this more emotional thing later, be, you know, ruthless. But even as he's like stalking Jerry the alien, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get him! Oh, I dropped my gun! No!" And there's all these kind of like it's more sort of goofy, like the action beats that happen like in their confrontations.
Yeah, it felt almost like how the sense of humor is in like it's like Starship Troopers, the movie. Sometimes.
Oh yeah, that exaggerated aesthetic.
Yeah, where it's like evil and upsetting, but also like funny and over the top, you know?
Yeah, you mentioned arena before. I feel like Dennis Quaid and Robert Duncan McNeil walked into an arena in the mid-'80s, and only Dennis Quaid walked out. I feel like they have especially in this movie, they have a similar look, similar thing going on, and he was in this, and I guess Inner Space, which was huge, and Robbie was in Masters of the Universe, and that was it for him.
Well, that's what they had to do. That's what the Chris's of our time are doing.
Right.
It's all a circle, you know.
The Chris's and the Dennises. Yeah. The movie also stars Louis Gossett Jr. in a role that, like, don't get me wrong, like he's been acting for 50 years, and he was in Roots and Officer and a Gentleman. Like, I know he's a great actor, but you think of him as like this, you know, bald, tough guy. He's got a mustache. He's got a gun. He's going to yell at you or something. And instead in this movie, he plays this, he's got this performance that's so, it's so involved, you know, it's so emotional, and he's got all this goofy, you know, stuff on his face. He's got like one big tooth in the middle, and yet his acting is coming through that. His performance is like making you like identify with him. And it's just really great.
The two of them, and him especially, have to sell you on so much out there stuff, you know, like almost, I wouldn't say like converting him, but like talking about their like religious beliefs, you know.
Well, he does really convert him though. Like
him being like pregnant, you know, it's like all this very, you know, high concept, I guess, science fiction, you know, fantasy.
Right. Him getting converted that's like a way to go, I guess. Like you could have had it been, well, I'm giving it away. I mean, we're going to talk about the Star Trek episode a little later, and it's kind of the same thing. But you could have had them be both totally belligerent, you know? I feel like if it was, and I think this story's probably been told, this story of like two combatants who like end up alone together and have to like either kill each other or figure it out has been going on for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But if this had been like a Union soldier and a rebel soldier like ending up in a house together, I feel like they'd both, I mean, historically we know who the good guys were, but they would both be like, well, you're like this and you're like this, and they'd have to both sort of meet each other in the middle. But in this, Jerry's just always the good guy. Like, and his entire race they have this religion, they have this beautiful planet, they care about their families, and they're just kind of so loving. And Dennis Quaid's just like a crazy asshole, just like trying to murder everybody. Yeah, which is like, that's fine, but I mean, like you wouldn't expect that normally.
I was shocked too, because when it started, I thought that like almost Starship Troopers like crazy asshole vibe he gave off was not like 100% what they were going for, and more of just like a unintended consequence. But then it's like, you know, and I thought they were going to meet in the middle, like this raving lunatic and, you know, this seemingly regular alien, which is weird.
Yeah.
But then, it's like, no, the movie is like, this guy is a raving asshole.
Humans in general suck in this movie. Of course, Brian James, who's another famous 80s and 90s, action movie, that guy shows up as Stubbs, and he's just the worst. And he's they've enslaved the Drax, so the aliens are like, they're basically just slave masters, and now it is Roots again, and Louis Gossett Jr. wonders like where his career is going. But like he was kind of torture the kid, and he's just like a horrible, terrible person.
Yeah, there's no question about what humanity is up to. I mean, they do try to say like those guys were bad, and we just kind of like went with them because
the Space Rangers are okay. They're just following orders or whatever.
But even then, it's like by the end of that, it's like probably not.
There's a lot, like I said before, there's a lot of stories that have told this type of story before. There's a movie from 1968 called Hell in the Pacific, where Lee Marvin and Toshiro Mifune find themselves stranded on like a desert island together in World War II. Which was directed by John Boorman, by the way. And I love John Boorman, so I can't believe I haven't seen this movie. Talked, even Star Trek has done this, like we talked before about Arena on the show, which kind of goes a different way. I'm not sure who's the Louis Gossett Jr. in that one. And of course, Star Trek The Next Generation did this before with The Enemy, where Geordi and a Romulan get stuck together on a planet. And then, because it always has to, Enterprise does it too. Enterprise has an episode called Dawn, which is very, very heavily influenced by this trip. His shuttle pod gets shot down by an alien, and then the two of them have to help each other survive to get through it.
You know what? That's okay. I want to watch that one, actually, because I can't get enough of this kind of thing, actually.
Yeah? Do you like Dances with Wolves?
I haven't really sat down, and I've seen that on like television or something, I don't...
This is wow. Okay, sorry. Do you like Avatar? This is the dividing line, I think, between us then, because the fact that you haven't like seen Dances with Wolves, or it's like just cultural osmosis. Wow,
I've probably seen like every scene of it.
That tells me everything I need to know. Wow. Yeah. Well, anyway, for any listener that does know Dances with Wolves, I think this is a lot like Dances with Wolves. You take out the individual aspect of it, but you get this guy who is one way, and then he meets these people that he doesn't understand, and he learns about their ways, and in a lot of ways kind of converts to their religion or sort of their view of the world and way of life, and goes native,
Yeah, I love just like the simplicity of it is what draws me in. There's just one character and there's another. There's other characters, but they don't matter really.
No, it's just and then of course the kid too. Who I thought did a really good job. Yeah.
I was won over by the kid for sure.
It couldn't have been easy to work like that, and as a child actor and all the makeup and prosthetics and stuff. And that actor's name was Bumper Robinson is his name.
Okay.
And he's also he's still acting today. He does a lot of voice acting now. He was in the Avengers Assemble show, and he does some of the DC movies, animated films and stuff. This movie is influenced, its influences are all over the place. We talked about Forbidden Planet, but I think there's a lot of Alien in it too.
Alien, okay.
Yeah, which someday we're going to talk about every sci-fi movie eventually on this show, but that had only come out, like 6 years before and had really influenced things. Like when this opens, it sort of is panning across painted space, but space nonetheless, and the words are kind of coming in, like line by line in that same way that Alien does. Yeah.
I love that.
Also the idea of like a dirty future, in Alien and this movie, somebody, you have tennis shoes on basically instead of like moon boots or space shoes or something.
Yeah, especially those the villains at the end you were talking about. They just look like your 80s. Like they just look like they showed up from the 80s.
Fingerless gloves and one earring. Yeah. There's also just the elements of Earth culture. Like Star Trek's like, oh, we don't know what any of that stuff is. We've got replicators and Ryza now, but like just having Mickey Mouse, take back what you said about Mickey Mouse, or like having the can of Pepsi, just showing us, it's still a humanity you recognize. It's just in the future. I think they say, I wrote it down somewhere, but I think they say that it's 2000 65 or something like that at some point in the film.
I'm looking forward to it then.
20. He goes missing from 2092 to 2095.
Okay. Well, Alien in this movie are the futures where they still have capitalism. And
sure, yeah.
Star Trek that's why they get the moon boots or whatever. They get the pajamas.
Yeah. Well, and that's that's vital to the theme, I think, of both films, is that in Alien and the Alien universe, your boss doesn't care about you, and a company will sell you out and sell your body out, basically, to do what they want. And in this, it's just Davidge keeps harping on the fact that Earth bought, or paid the rights to mine in this area or whatever. It's like, we got the right to be, we got the contracts. And then, of course, the Dracs are like, okay, but I don't know what that is. We just live here. You're just coming to our planets. Yeah,
it's got the idea of like the imperialism or whatever. Like we just made up that it's legal for us to come in here.
Right. Yeah. It says right here, Section 32, subparagraph. Right.
Or we're willing to work with these people who are enslaving you because they get certain things done that we don't want to do, basically. Or we act like we don't want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like, and we've talked about it, this movie doesn't care about subtlety really at all. It really goes for it. But throwing slaves in at the end is like, okay. I guess he could have just taken Zami or whatever his name is back to the Drax planet, and they would go, oh, okay, you guys the whole family thing, you seem okay. But instead we had to have third act, he frees a bunch of them, and it's like, oh no, humans are okay sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that's why I felt like it could have been 2, or when the kid showed up, I felt like, oh, this is going on a long time. But then I was won over by the end, by the fact of the story being not only did he become friends with this one alien, but by the end he was willing to go against his whole post and his people to save their people. So it was more than just that guy, that one guy's, he's one of the good ones. It was more like, yeah. I gotta help them all.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know exactly what the teachings of their religion are, but the old slave at the end blows away Brian James, and it's like, you've taught us to kill. Thank you. We never really get into that part of their culture. Something that I was really impressed by in this film, and when I heard that it was based on a novella that was published in Amazing Stories or whatever, and you hear all the stories about classic sci-fi and the sexism that's involved and the completely self-conscious imperialism and American spacemen getting rid of the green aliens. This is clearly set up against that, but it's also we basically have an intersex character here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a character that's, depending on how they want to define themselves, both male and female or neither, and that's never really. I mean, Davidge is surprised by that, but he's like, okay, great. Now I got to take care of a kid. Well, I'm trying to run this restaurant. He's a little nuts, and the movie it plays that totally straight. It never makes. I just trying to imagine if the Orville did this, and I know the Orville did do this, but I could just see a lot of jokes or sort of asides that could be done.
Isn't this so dang goofy?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they just don't. And I've probably already said him a million times, but it doesn't even it even kind of keeps his pronouns straight. It's just calls him Jerry, what he is basically.
Yeah. Does he ever? I feel like there's times where he says
your parent or whatever.
Oh, your parent. Yeah. Yeah, I love how straight it's completely played so straight, and I really like that. Especially
this is 1985. you know what I mean?
Yeah, this did feel very I don't know, Star Trek-y of it. I mean,
it's the most expensive Star Trek episode.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? With the highest production quality.
Yeah, I liked it. I especially just liked seeing the performance where he is. Because throughout the movie, he's this warrior that they're supposed to be fighting, and then you do have him now playing this, softer, almost what we normally view as like the motherly, aspect of him, or like whatever, the childbearing part of him. I liked seeing those two elements come out of the same character, and it's, again, never comedic. It's never, it's just, it is what it is.
And it's also, it starts, I'm trying to think, who wrote this? Maybe I'll look with one eye while I talk about the other thing. Edward Camara, never heard of him. But the fact that also that the movie, Dennis Quaid starts off as this gigantically, like, toxically masculine figure, and all of his friends are all like, yeah, we're gonna kill these guys, we're gonna get them, and like, oh, that chick, she's so fat, we call her the white balloon, and all this. And there's one woman pilot, fine, but he only gets better as he's exposed to Drax, who is not that at all. Like, he has the positive aspects of masculinity, and by the time that he dies, now Davidge is raising the child and being like this parental figure and teaching him football, but also like teaching him how much his dad loved him and the nurturing aspects. Like, again, this is a sci-fi movie from 1985.
Yeah, I was completely surprised by a lot of this movie, for sure.
The whole production design is amazing, because there's some parts that they just work so hard on, and there's other parts that are like, okay, like the whole thing looks like a Yes album cover. It's like there's these amazing matte paintings, and they're crawling through these like rocky landscapes and stuff, and then the aliens have like a glass bubble based technology or something. Like, all of inside of his ship is all like these glass bubbles, and then he gets his gun and it's like a series of like smaller bubbles, and it's
those
like,
look pretty cool. I
don't know what any of that is. Yeah, but then of course, like, Dennis Quaid just got like, somebody took a James Bond gun prop and sprayed it silver, and that's his gun.
Yeah, I did like the fight in the end. Wasn't there just like a lot of guns?
Yeah, there's a guy who just had a shotgun, like a pump shotgun.
I thought that was sick. That there was just like, yep, like we're in space, but we still got guns. I don't know. I mean, it's not that far in the future. I guess guns wouldn't change that much.
No, and he's singing Midnight Special to himself. So apparently, music didn't advance at all. Is Robinson Crusoe? So I was trying to think. Is Robinson Crusoe like the earliest form of this story that you can think of? That was like that was kind of pop literature, I guess, right? Like the novel was.
Yeah. I could see that. I feel like it's a tale as old as time.
Oh, well, which is the beauty and which is the beast. I think it would be important for us to talk probably right now, and then I guess going on into the Trek episode, about the idea of what I'm going to call, sensitively if I can, the magical Negro alien.
Oh, okay.
Where, and it could just be totally random in casting, but in this case we have a very spiritual character who changes the life of a wasp white man, and it's played by Louis Gossett Jr. under the makeup. And then, of course, in the Star Trek episode, we've got kind of the same thing. We've got Jean-Luc Picard, and then you got old Paul Winfield inside a rubber mask, teaching him to just slow down and think about the world in a different way.
Yeah, I could see how that element is strongly there. Actually, I mean, I think there is, It's kind of like the Epic of Gilgamesh, where there's a lot of weird stuff in that story.
Was Enkidu a black guy? Is that what you're saying? He comes into town. He's like, try golfing. Yeah, relax.
But I think there's a lot of I don't know, interesting things beyond that in the story. Though I'm sure that was subconsciously in some of the casting when they went with that. I would almost guarantee, like, not that they were like, we need to get a black guy, but they were probably like, this guy, he probably would look the best as an alien,
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Maybe we'll answer the question later. Some of the best moments in this film are moments that you would absolutely cut in a modern blockbuster, I think. Like, and this is not, I mean, maybe by 80 standards, this was something of an attempted blockbuster, but you could barely make this now. This would be made perhaps by Blumhouse or by Gunpowder and Sky as like a smaller movie. But you would totally cut the scene where the guys are just shooting the bodies out of the airlock, and then they got like a stack of wreaths, and they're like, homina, yeah, whatever you were, psh, there's your wreath. They're doing like the burials and just kind of shooting them out. And the part where we slow everything down, and they just have this exchange where he's like, well, tell me about your father. And he's like, oh, my dad, he's worked on computers, and my mom was a waitress. And he's like, oh, so you are Davidge, and your father worked on computers. That is your lineage. It's like, oh,
I loved that scene.
Yeah.
Although that was apparently the same as Picard doing the Gilgamesh speech.
That was, yeah. Oh, Joe Menosky.
Yeah, it just got to me.
Yeah. Apparently the Drax haven't invented Ancestry.com technology, but yeah, that was just so, that's the kind of thing that, cut it for time. We got to get to the gunfight with Brian James.
Yeah, they like that again, like how I felt like this is going on long. But at the same time, it's like I appreciated almost everything about it. So I ended up loving the entire thing by the end.
I really did like it. I mean, I think it's got its faults. It's not the best movie ever, but for something that disappeared nearly without a trace, yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by the film. There's one thing that always bugs me, and it's not a big deal, but at the very end, we see, Davidge takes Zamis back to the Drax world, and we see this beautiful scene where they do the ritual of naming the family or whatever. And then, like, a VO comes in, and we don't know who this is. It's just some random voice.
I know.
And so we took him back. And there's no other way to, like, tell that story. They couldn't really afford to get a bunch of extras and, like, show the ceremony, but they didn't, I don't know, just set up that it was his friend or something like that, like, who is that voice?
He could have just done it, right?
And I took him back, and the planet was beautiful, and they had Mickey
actually kind of loved that it was just like a random thing. I don't know, some of the weird cracks in this movie, or like some of the weird flaws, are just like charm it up a little bit.
I don't know. There was just so many like Space Force characters hanging around. It's just like just one of them couldn't do it. Have the woman do it. Pick
just one of them. They could have done it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say about this film. Although, like I said, I mean, it's deep. I could probably talk about it for a long time. We didn't talk about the creatures at all. Oh
yeah, there was speaking of like Alien, there was some like pretty out there and kind of cool looking creatures that they must have, they definitely put some effort into their designs and like creation.
Yeah, I liked that idea of the antlion creature that's just eating these like turtles with the shells. And then he tries to take Davidge, and they fight him off. And that's like a bonding moment between them. But then later on, he like pops up under their house, and he's like, "I'm back, fuckers."
Yeah, there's a lot of good like setup and payoff that I feel like I wasn't expecting from this movie. Like, things that just like made sense. Like, oh yeah, we can build a shelter out of this, and this thing. Like when the first time you see that quicksand snake tongue monster eat the other one with the turtle shell, I thought like, well, that was weird, because I thought this would be the type of movie to just like have that there and be weird, but then it actually like was pretty important to the story, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Yeah,
put all the shells together. Yeah,
a little bit of effort there.
This it's a good story, or a good screenwriting. This movie, like we said, disappeared, but it became weirdly a hit in the Soviet Union. It was actually the first Western film to be shown widely in cinemas in the Soviet Union, and so it gained a following there. And I thought it was interesting, just in my kind of wonky research, that there was a film a Soviet film in 1956 called The 41st, which is about a female sniper in the Red Army and meeting or having to guard a officer of the White Army. So it's set during the Russian Civil War, and it's a similar thing where they sort of go through all these trials, and they start to like, understand each other a little more, and they fall in love. And in that movie, he tells her the story of Robinson Crusoe.
Oh, whoa, okay. Well, that's cool. I kind of want to see that now.
Yeah. I think we unlocked the key, the secret there.
And this ended up, it just ended up going right into Star Trek, which due to the time period. I guess by the 5th season it was a different time, but they were always grappling with the Soviet Union, the Cold War, so
Yeah.
it's all circular,
I'd love to talk to, I guess they'd have to be somebody that was old enough to have lived in the Soviet regime, and like if Star Trek was popular over there, if they could get it, first of all, and then if they liked the idea of it. Or did they watch it and go, are we the Klingons? We're the Klingons, aren't we? These assholes.
Yeah, that would be interesting to do, because it is like a show that's kind of against the worldview of like the United States at the time.
We got to win this thing, yeah.
But also, like, they make a lot of episodes. They make the Federation the United States, and sometimes they're not. So it'd be interesting to see what they would think of it.
All right, well, project for the future then, I guess.
Yeah, that'd be a good deep dive.
Okay, well, with that, let's take a break for a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more BackTrekking.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay, every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the sailor warrior of love and justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers.
Okay, we're back, and it's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. First contact and exploration are the chief goals of Starfleet. Though it's nominally a military organization, the men and women and beings of Starfleet are charged by the Federation to seek out new life and new civilizations. Most of the time, the diplomatic skill of the crew and the advanced technology that they bear makes the process an easy one. But what happens when that technology is useless and the new life they meet is so strange and unintelligible that conflict seems inevitable? That's the scenario that gets explored in the TNG episode, Darmok.
A savage kidnapping.
You're holding our captain. I want him released.
And Picard is forced to play a dangerous game of survival. No! Now there is only one way to bring him back alive.
And it's going to take me at least a full day to do it. Captain Picard could be dead by then.
And it could lead to a full-scale war.
Stand by to fire, Mr. Worf.
We cannot survive another hit.
Deadly encounter on another exciting episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Darmok.
This may be this is not a hot take necessarily, but I love this episode.
Your hot take is, this is great.
This is awesome. Yeah.
My hot take is Threshold is better than people think.
Threshold. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what you're on about lately.
R.I.P. the mentions, I guess. Yeah, but yeah, this is consistently, I think, in lists of top 10 best episodes of Star Trek. And for me, I don't even know how to put it, but isn't this what Star Trek is? Isn't this what it's supposed to be about?
This is the most Star Trek episode of Star Trek.
Until this,
Until
this, we had Arena. Right? I think this kind of supplanted Arena as, this is Star Trek. This is what you think of.
It easily takes it over too, because it has the classic element of just when you picture Star Trek, it's like a guy and an alien on a planet fighting or whatever. But then it's got the even greater. I mean, Arena had it, but an even greater social commentary going on.
Yeah, this was a script by Joe Menosky, who wrote some for TNG. He wrote a lot of Voyager episodes, and he's a writer who got his start. He was a journalist covering the science beat for NPR. So he's clearly a thoughtful guy, an intellectual guy, and a lot of his scripts have that sort of, you can tell that I bet he's got a whole Temerian phrase book that we never got to in this episode. I bet he did a lot of background on this.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them I forget about, and then when they come back up, I'm always I wonder what that one. I mean, actually, I don't usually wonder, because watching this now, I've recently watched it 2 months ago or something, and I can usually especially now that I know what happens, it like I feel like I know what everyone's saying even when I don't know what they're saying, you know?
I must have seen this like 10 times, and I got that too this time. Like for the first time, I mean, I had the closed captioning on, but for the first time when they used a phrase, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I know what that means. Like he's mad at Picard now because Picard, like, you know, is not listening, or this is going to fail, or I felt that too. I got the real essence of what they were saying. The trick is when Riker keeps talking to the second in command of their ship in orbit, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think that like Paul Winfield plays Dathon in this, and Paul Winfield is an amazing actor of stage and screen. He's no longer with us, of course, but I actually saw him once on stage. He played Othello. Go figure, yeah, at the Guthrie. And well, I got a story about that, and maybe we'll roll the dice and see if we get to that later. But the point is that he's such an expressive actor that I feel like even if you turn the sound off, you could kind of get it. And that's if I had to pick at this episode at all, that's the one thing that doesn't really work for me. Not forget the fact that Starfleet should have cultural anthropologists, you know, or like at least have that training. And it seems like they could figure out what's going on here. You know what I mean? Like Troy eventually starts to figure it out, and then Picard on the planet is like, oh, it's a ritual where we work together. And it's like, yeah, guys, but you couldn't just like body language, right?
Yeah, there is like, that is always there in my mind when I'm watching this. Like I go to that thought, like they really couldn't figure this out earlier.
No, they have to just turn to Google, basically. They're like, Google Darmok.
There is just a scene where they're Googling. Yeah,
really, yeah.
And
but
so
I think...
not as exciting, but
No.
it's maybe it's just the benefit of the format of Star Trek, where it's like, all, you know, this is one story contained, but it's like, it's kind of easy to just like go with the flow, you know, like it's not too worried about that aspect because there's like something greater they're trying to get to. And
I think that they do all the legwork they need to. I think that the show, the production knows that we might run into this. And so the very first part of the episode is them just hitting over and over again. Over hundreds of years, like we've run into these guys, and every time it's like, I don't know, and we just kind of take off, you know. And then Picard is like, well, I don't think this is going to be a problem. Smash cut to Paul Winfield's babbling about something, and they're all looking at each other like, what?
And yeah, someone dies eventually. So
yeah, right.
It was a problem, you know.
And Winfield is so good that even in that first, you know, teaser pre-scene, he's talking, and then he kind of looks at his second in command, and even him is like, oh, these guys, you know.
I love that scene. That's the one where it's like maybe it's because it's the first time they're talking to each other completely in their language or whatever, but it's like, you know, now watching it, you know what they're talking about, and like even, you know, the guy getting upset about it, it's like it hits me hard. I don't know why I get very emotional about it, like, because maybe it's just like they, you know, you know now what they know the risk is, but like it's still like you totally see on like the Enterprise that they're like, what is happening, you know?
Yeah, and it gets pretty tense. Like I often question what, I think we were talking about this on another episode of Enterprising Individuals, but I often question like what dramatically the XO is really for. Like you need somebody, if the captain goes down, you need somebody to take that role. But like if you think about Riker's fun, but does, you know, how many like storylines does he have that are like really good? And Chakotay's kind of a zero, and
yeah,
Kira's good, but that's baked into why there's conflict there. And but I guess like who's second in command on NX-01? T'Pol, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a little bit different though in that situation.
It really works here though, because Picard goes down there and he's ignorant, and I think it's a little overplayed. You know, he's like, Shaka indeed. It's like, all right, whatever. But
I love that. Yeah.
But while he's trying to figure it out, Riker just goes into full on. He's the guy he's the Davidge character now. Do you know what I mean? All he can think of is, we got to stop these guys. We got to do everything we can to block what they're doing, because clearly, you know, they are in opposition to us. And that causes a lot of problems.
Riker it's kind of a thankless role, I think. And I kind of appreciate it because, you know, Jonathan Frakes directs some stuff too.
Yeah.
And, even when he directs, I feel like, if you compare that to like when Shatner is running the show, I always appreciate his restraint a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in Generations, like Picard's going off to have the adventure.
Yeah.
And or First Contact it is or whatever. And Riker, he's just like gonna do the cool, like the basic captain ship stuff, and I think he's okay with that because he looks cool,
Right, yeah. I mean, that's what he's the blunt object. Picard is the enlightened like diplomat, and so we'll just bring Riker in to take care of this stuff. Do the Riker maneuver.
And I did love just like the scenes of him, like getting angry with the second in command of the Tamarians or whatever. Like, just it was funny to me, like just kind of grouchy. Like, we don't know what the hell you're saying.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. Riker definitely would never figure this out.
Oh, no. And I was thinking, too, I mean, you mentioned Shatner. I was like, what if Shatner, only Patrick Stewart could have pulled this off, because I'm trying to imagine Shatner being like, Shaka, when the walls fell. Like, it's just the gravitas that Stewart brings to the role, and also just... At this point, we know Picard, and we know it's like, come on, Picard, I know you can figure this out. We expect this from him at this point.
Yeah, and like he sells you, like we talked about, kind of how maybe sort of silly the idea of this is, because they would, they probably should have figured it out, and it's just silly. The little phrases I think are silly, but in the moments in this episode where Patrick Stewart, where Picard is like working it out, and kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I get like, I almost start to cry at these scenes because I think it's so beautiful. Like, it's so well done. Like, just, he really sells you that he is like having a realization. And yeah, it's to what you said. Like, that's what Patrick Stewart can do really well. Is sell you on these little, not even emotions, just these little ideas,
And it only really starts on the whole because it is kind of an aggressive act. They just like take the captain and just beam him down to a thing. And
totally.
Hey, we got to stab a electric triceratops together. That's the only way through this thing.
The triceratops is so good.
Yeah. There's. I wonder about the Tamarians and their language. And I mean, I guess it's it's not real. It's just sci-fi. But how do they even get to a point of technology that's greater than the Federation? Like, how do you tell somebody to fix the plumbing? Do you know what I mean? Was there some famous plumber who stopped a leak? Oh, wait a minute. This is it. The Mario Brothers. That's
Mario.
What it is. Yeah.
When the Bowser came.
Mario and Luigi. Yeah. At the waterfront.
Yeah. They're like almost everything about this episode, like on paper, I think, like, well, it sounds cool as a premise. It's kind of like out there, but like almost everything else about it is like sounds unbelievable. Like how would this be a good story? It doesn't make any sense almost, but you watch it and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's Picard and Dathon at whatever the planet's called.
Eladrel or something.
Eladrel, yeah.
Oh, I got it.
Like, do they have descriptive words? Because Picard is trying to figure out the Temba. And he's like, oh, it's generosity. It's being generous. Like, do they have the word for generous? I've heard before, I think I've said before, that their language is like kind of like memes. Like when you when you throw in, and of course I can't think of any memes now because
now you're talking about this is a season 3 Discovery.
Oh God!
Episode.
There you go. They run into the planet where it's all like I can't have cheeseburger or whatever. Yeah, but they've got like a meme or a picture for a situation. So, Riker likes Troy, but then he sees another girl or whatever the boyfriend meme is. But you still need, like, they talk in the episode about how context is important, but they must have. How do they not understand? They understand the single words when they're part of the phrases, but like I guess they just don't. Do they not have? I guess generosity is a quality. It is. I guess it's a noun itself, but do they not understand those? Is it only in connection to these specific sort of moments that themselves abstractly evoke these ideas? Yeah, it's just memes.
How do they tell the story to the younger generation? Is what I would wonder.
Right, because assuming that their children have a similar neurological development to humans, then you sit the kid down and you go, Darmok and Jalad, and the kid's like, well, who the fuck are Darmok and Jalad? And if you can't tell me who they are, then how do they learn that?
Like,
All
like
right,
when
this episode sucks.
it's awful. Yeah, no, because when he asks Picard to tell him about Gilgamesh, it's like Picard can't just say, Gilgamesh at Uruk or whatever,
Yeah.
he says, he made people sad, like he's getting into it.
People cried out. Yeah.
And I still loved it though. I ate it up.
Yeah, it's really great. And it does seem, as Dathon is dying, their face is wet or whatever, he does seem to like, okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, I remember before it happened in the scene, I was like, I can't wait for this moment because I love when he just goes, Gilgamesh. he's like loves Gilgamesh already,
Maybe it's a restriction or a proscription. Maybe they can understand, but they, their religion or just their customs, they choose to only communicate like that. You know what I mean? It's like you get on a meme thread on Facebook or something like that, and everybody has to only post memes, but you kind of know what you're thinking and you know where you're going, but you have to represent it in a certain way or you get in trouble.
Yeah, maybe there's a more, because they also say it's symbolic. I think they say in this, so maybe there's like a, maybe when they tell these stories to each other, there's more of a, like this episode where they act it out more,
yeah, maybe
there is more of a physical, performance nature to it even.
And the fact that they can sort of abbreviate things too, because it's, Shaka when the walls fell, but when things go really south, like on the planet, Dathon's just like, Shaka. He's just basically just saying failure over and over again. But it's just like Shaka is representative of the entire phrase.
Poor Shaka kind of gets a bad rap.
Shaka is really getting it. Yeah. In this
episode. There's no positive Shaka.
It's a really neat way around the language thing. Like Voyager, which I'm doing a rewatch of Voyager, and I'm really enjoying it, but it kind of drives me nuts sometimes that they can go to a planet on the other side of the galaxy. And yeah, I guess we've already explained why everybody looks human, but the universal translator just works perfectly. And I know the show probably couldn't happen without that, although other sci-fi properties have tackled that problem. But there's this one episode, it's not a good episode, I'm not praising it, where, guess what, it's a Chakotay episode. He gets dropped into this planet, and it's like a Vietnam metaphor. He's like with a bunch of dudes, and they're all in camo, and they've got like these M16 looking guns. And that plot is not important. I don't want to talk about that. But the characters talk in this way that also kind of gets around the way the translator is programmed. Like they talk kind of ostentatiously. It reminded me of Firefly. Like Firefly, they use like these old timey words. They could just say, do this, but it's like, I'll do this and I'll end you and I'll do this. And it's the same thing in Voyager. Like they're saying basically a sentence that you can understand, but they would pick the weirdest word choice or like these archaic words. And so it gives, it creates this like wall of, of a lack of understanding. And of course, near the end of the episode, after Chakotay's hung out with these guys for a while, he kind of can rap with them and starts talking like the way they do. But that's a cool way to sort of put that doorstop or that roadblock in, where normally it's just, it's a blob thing. Yeah, we can talk that language, no problem.
Yeah, I like that. It's a more interesting attempt than like, I don't really know if they've done this often, but like, the translator's not working, like,
yeah,
that feels kind of lazy to me.
There's, I love the original series. I also love the original series movies, but they're almost completely different. It's almost like a different franchise.
Yes.
And there's, in Star Trek 6, they throw them in the prison and apparently take away the universal translator. So when this giant alien's trying to kill him, he's like, yeah, I don't have the thing, so I can't do the talk. And I don't know if he could have talked this guy out of trying to kick his ass, but he ends up having to go through this whole fight with him.
Ooh, okay, quick episode idea. 2 people who are on the same ship, but different races, one's like Klingon, one's human or whatever, but they've always just relied on the translator. Get stranded on a planet like Arena. but they can't contact the ship. Their translators are broken, and now you can't even talk to your own pal. There's my quick pitch for Star Trek episode.
So yeah, on one side it's like, "Hey man, what's going on?" The other side it's all Klingon talk, and that's we got to get over that. Yeah,
could be fun.
I could see that. Although so many fans know Klingon inside and out that if you'd have to do some work on really creating, say, a Romulan language, which, as far as I know, I don't think we've really had depicted. Like even in Nemesis, when we're just on Romulus, they're just talking English, basically.
There's an open lane, is what you're saying.
Yeah. A Joe Menosky figure, or Menosky himself. I don't think he's working on Discovery anymore, so he's got some free time.
Oh, I guess on Discovery they had one episode where it's like the translators on the fritz or whatever.
Yeah, but that was more like goofs and giggles, right? It was like, I'm talking French. Why would you be talking French?
Yeah, I remember when that first happened, I was like shocked. I was like, oh, this could be wild. And then it was just like, oh, this is not the episode.
Yeah, but I think they were just trying to, for 50 years, people have said, well, they never even talked about how it works. And I think Discovery, a lot of the choices they've made have been to show that they're not like afraid of of criticism. Do you know what I mean? So like they're going, we get that it's a thing, and we get that somebody comes on and it should be like an old kung fu movie where somebody's talking but their lips don't match what they're saying. But instead of like taking too much time, we've just got this little scene that goes, yeah, we get that it's a thing. See, I complimented it right after I criticized it.
Yeah, it was a good compliment sandwich.
Delicious. It was more like a compliment hors d'oeuvre. It was on top of a criticism.
That works.
Anything else you want to say about this episode?
I just love this episode. I didn't know you mentioned the writer is like a big sci-fi fan.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because I felt like not just sci-fi, but I felt like this episode was somewhat like meta-ish in a way, in that it's like, the big thing it's about is about how stories are, important, and like both of these movie and shows about like cultural exchange, and like, how, our myths have, similar themes we can draw from them, and how even looking back, we're in the future, but even looking back on something like Gilgamesh, which is like an old weird story, like can tell us something about, our culture, even, hundreds of years in the future. And I thought that really got to me, the past couple times I've watched this. And it makes sense because it's, you said he was a big sci-fi fan, the writer, and it's like, this has elements of classic Star Trek in it, almost like doing a play on that, but like, commenting on it at the same time. And so I just love everything about this episode.
I wonder if the Tamarians or the Children of Tama would like us when they got to know us, because, Data makes the point that they have no self-identity in their ego structure. Because they don't think of, I am doing this. They think of, when someone did this, this is the quality I'm trying to communicate.
They're like second person.
Yeah. And if there's no I, if there's no me is sort of in their language, then they would have to think cooperatively, and they'd all have to think aspirationally. Like, you've got this idea of who Darmok was as a hero. They would all be trying to emulate that. And so they get to know us, and everything that the humans do in this is just getting in the way of just completing this task, which, like I said before, is a little bit, they don't think we're putting you in danger to do this. It's more important for both of our races if you kill this electronic triceratops with me. But everything they do, so like Picard's like, I won't fight you, and it's like, Picard, that's not, he wants you to take the knife so you can stab the thing. And then they, in the middle of the episode, they finally succeed in like trying to beam him out, and all it does is just take him out of the fight. So Dathon gets housed by the monster, and it just sort of like giving in, and they find a race that's more cooperative than the Federation even is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, so they've out-Federation them.
Once they get to know us, maybe they'll be like, these guys, they're always asking for their lawnmower back. It's everybody's lawnmower now. Who knows?
Yeah, I love that. It's like, because we've met like the Borg, who, have a different sense of identity
Yeah.
from them, but it's like, you know, closer to them, but it's like radically different still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Seeing the, you know, enemies, the best enemies in fiction are often dark reflections of the hero.
Oh yeah, and there's a bunch of little stuff in here that I guess we can't totally get to, but real quick, it's good that Triceratops is dead. I don't know what it was doing there, but they
just beam Picard out, and it's probably still hanging around down there.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Well, it's bad the captain's dead. They got to go back and kill that Triceratops, or maybe they keep that Triceratops there as like, you know, for when they need to do this again.
Right.
That's the Darmok Triceratops.
Hose him down, and we'll get ready for next time.
And then another little detail that I loved was that I normally don't notice or something is when they find out the captain had died and they do the little thing with the knife. And
yeah.
It hit me again. It just like I really got me, even though it's like, you know, they don't have to say why they're doing that, but you understand it. And then Picard does it in the end of the episode.
Yeah.
You know, again, just with it's just that whole idea of like, you know, learning from their culture, you know, I don't know. It got me.
So that leads to my Paul Winfield story. So that's one thing.
Okay,
I've got
perfect.
2 things. The first thing is, this is all, there's some of, it's not really a bottle episode because they're on location, but they don't move around a lot in the episode. They're just in Bronson Canyon or whatever shooting this thing. But there's like a really great effect shot at the end of the episode when he holds up the log and they beam it out of his hand and the camera pans to the view screen and it beams into the other guy's hand. It's like, oh, that's a really great continuity. I like that.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing was, I don't want to end this on a down note, but when I saw Paul Winfield play Othello, I remember reading a news story at that time in like the paper or something about how he played Othello and he wanted to play him like sympathetic. I know he chokes a lady to death, but you know, he's kind of a sympathetic character. But the director wanted to emphasize how different he was as a Moor, you know, in the script, or as a black person from Africa.
Yeah.
And so when he first comes out, he wanted Paul Winfield to do this like hokey dokey, you know, hoodoo sort of thing with like a stick and like this ritual thing. And Paul Winfield had talked about how like, I really didn't want to do that, but I didn't want to like get into a fight with the director about it. And it was only this one little thing. And then it goes on and I'm just kind of a normal character who's in orange instead of gray or whatever. And I thought that was like, yeah, I guess that's something that as an actor of color, you would have to think about, you know, and something you'd have to like react to. So you take that and you put him in this episode where he's playing an alien, and it's an alien that's very different than like, hey, what's up with the Federation? Like at one point he takes off his little things and he's kind of like rolling some dice or some sticks or whatever. And he's got the thing where he touches the knife, touches his forehead. And there's all this ritual in there, but that's it. There's a reason for it to be there. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It makes sense. And it isn't just, oh yeah, just like shake this stick around or something.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's, circling back to the whole idea of like the magical Negro thing.
Right.
I'm sure like both these actors are both like incredible. But you know, I'm also sure like the role, like you said, the roles were probably limited. So like they were doing a lot with, you know, maybe questionable premises or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is a difference in, especially with Darmok, where it's like everything feels so, you know, even though it's not always explained, like so intentional, you know?
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, go out there and be I don't know, voodoo or whatever, you know, like, yeah.
Jerry was cool though. Like Jerry would have liked Mickey Mouse, I think, if he saw a Mickey Mouse cartoon.
Yeah, I'm glad he apologized for what he said about Mickey Mouse.
Right. He's a happy guy. Well, something that makes Trek is the technology of its future, which sometimes facilitates what the characters are doing, but often it gets in the way and it's a complication. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies, and we add what we get to the non-Trek media, and we subtract what we get from the Trek episode and see how each would be different. It's our technological exchange. So I'm going to get my randomly selected device out here. We have a list of technology with 10 items on it. The technology is phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drive, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical tech, and androids. and I'm going to roll my advanced randomizing device. And I got perfect. I swear I'll take a picture of this if I have to.
Okay.
I swear I didn't plan this, but I got 7 communicators. And I think in this instance, we're going to have to use the little known fact that the communicators also contain the universal translating equipment.
Oh, okay.
Did we just kill another episode?
Yeah, we might have.
How do you do? Well, first of all, we'll start off with Enemy Mine, of course. If in Enemy Mine they had universal translation and communicators, how would that affect the story?
Well, it would lessen it a little bit because they jump through it in the movie anyway because they're doing a lot. But like the idea of like they took the time to learn each other's language and it was somewhat of a struggle, like that plays big in the movie, I think.
And in Darmok as well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it like has that Darmok element to it, even though that's not the main thing isn't, you learned how to talk to me, but that's like the comparison is obviously there.
It's they both contain a kind of riff on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Not, our Worf, but,
no.
and the idea that, the language that you learn shapes how you think about things, not necessarily your brain chemistry, but just like the way that you see yourself and the way that you see other people, is affected by how those structures are represented in your language. And so, they both pairs of people learn their language, but they also learn about each other in that way. Here's something we never covered when we talked about Enemy Mine. I don't know where this planet is.
Okay.
Dennis Quaid's ship leaves his little space station, and then it crashes on this planet, and you get the idea that the planet's really close to the station. And then
definitely.
And then we know it is because later on he just grabs a ship, he blows the doors open, and then he just flies to the same planet. So, I never heard an explanation why nobody ever went and looked for him.
Either it's unexplained or it makes perfect sense. Because there is an element to it, like the whole time they are like, or I guess he doesn't know it, but he sort of knows in the, later part of the movie that there are humans nearby,
this is not on a charted planet. Yeah.
Like if he wanted, I bet he could have probably gone and gotten out, so
yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it. Like maybe those people there, I don't know. I'm not trying to like make up excuses for the movie, but
no, I think you solved one big part of it, which is if they could understand each other immediately, that would not ameliorate at all the conflict. They would just, definitely from the Dennis Quaid side, I don't know about the Louis Gossett Jr. side, but he would just be able to effectively insult the guy and tell him he's going to kill him. And then also, depending on who has the communicator, they could just radio for a pickup, so there wouldn't even be the experience of them having to survive and learn to rely on each other. So I think we just killed this movie. We destroyed this movie.
Because I feel like in real life, there's times where if you've ever tried to have a conversation or like communicate something with someone who speaks a different language than you, like there are times where it's frustrating just because you have this barrier, but like when you are in a situation where both people are like, doing their best at like, and you actually, achieve the outcome you're both looking for, it's like, if it kind of feels good, like, hey, even though we couldn't talk like, the way we normally do, we figured it out. And so I see that more as a, you come away from it a positive, outcome, feeling,
Yeah, the feeling of reward when you do have a success and make a point of connection or understanding is even more.
Yeah.
As far as Darmok goes, oh boy, if we took away communication, which for most of the episode there's this field that prevents communication, so that's not a problem. If you took away the universal translator, though, that's interesting because so much of their language. This brings up the idea, and I bet Minosky would have a whole essay on the answer behind this, but this brings up the idea of if most of their language is proper nouns that are naming something, then you would hear Darmok something Jalad, something Tanagra, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what their conjunctions or their prepositions are, I guess, but I feel like you might be able to figure it out still.
I think if this was the movie version of this episode, they would have that extra step in there.
Yeah.
Just to make it take longer.
Yeah, right. A little extra act there. Also, when they say Darmok, is it like, what is so they're, as aliens, they have similar linguistic equipment to us, because they're played by humans. So they've got a tongue and lips and a throat and all that. But like when they say Darmok, are they actually saying Darmok? Or is it, an approximation that is created by the universal translator?
That's what I always kind of wondered, but I never, maybe I'm too stupid, but I never thought like, oh yeah, it's a proper noun, so it would be the same.
Yeah.
But even then, like, on Earth we have different proper noun names for like countries or people. So
sure,
who knows? Maybe it's something like. I don't know what the translator would know to do, like, does it have does it have like an auto-tune, but for words?
Yeah, who knew that T-Pain was the linguistic genius that invented it way
he's
back
a hell of a
in
singer,
the 21st century. So yeah, that's like, if the first thing I said was true, I think they might be able to figure it out with the body language and stuff too. If the other part's true, then it's all just gobbledygook and they're screwed.
Yeah.
Didn't they? Here's something that the episode, we could just wreck the whole episode with. At the very beginning, they say that they received a signal from them because I think, they decided like, let's give this another try. And it was like a mathematical signal, but it had no content necessarily. But isn't like math the basic language of the universe? When we send SETI signals out, we're sending, mathematical signals showing that we understand like prime numbers, showing that we understand, mathematical principles. So couldn't you, I guess it would be hard to attach meaning, especially if you're talking to like a metaphorical race, but couldn't we use mathematics somehow to communicate with them?
Oh, I mean, there's probably an episode in there, if they haven't done it, that you could do, you know what I mean?
There's an episode where, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one where Captain Picard is kidnapped and he's placed in a cage with 3 other aliens. And I didn't bring it up because it isn't really like this scenario. It's more like, who's the bad guy in this situation. One of us is a traitor. And when he first gets there, he takes a circuit and he starts like tapping the sequence of prime numbers into the circuit. Because at this point, he doesn't know if his captors are intelligent or they're sentient or can communicate with him. So he's just trying to show them, I'm not some goldfish that you picked up. Like, I am a sentient being that understands mathematics and prime numbers.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay. I must not have seen this episode in years. I don't remember anything about it.
Now I can't remember the title and it makes me mad.
I like that idea. Like, even in Darmok, if you couldn't, communicate with it, you can at least show some sort of intent,
Sure.
Similar to their language in general,
If you mind melded with them, or if you had a full betazoid, with full telepathy, or even just like, Deanna Troi says that she does sense that they don't have any hostile intent. That's a good clue. Could you telepathically communicate with them, or would even their thoughts and their sort of feelings be so into this metaphorical structure that it would just be, again, just gobbledygook?
Yeah. I wonder if you could understand it, or you would just hear like, haha, Gilgamesh,
Shaka indeed, yes. Maybe, they'd be out of luck. All right. Well, next time I got to get a better dice or something because it keeps, I guess, fortuitously for entertainment purposes, but it just falls on. Are we talking about androids? Oh, we rolled androids.
Where my mind first went to was like phasers, because like they just had guns. And...
They're just shooting. Yeah. I like when they shoot. They have to shoot a spot on their ship, but they also shoot like just the right engine of the shuttlecraft or whatever. And then Riker's like, nice shooting. Like, it shows that they've got the power and they've got like the skills to use it. So it really ups the tension in that part.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Well, I hope we don't end up doing the episode where they find out that like warp drive is destroying the galaxy and then we roll warp drive. Like, I can just see that happen.
Oh, problem solved, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we just won't record that episode then.
Yeah.
Well, should we tell people what's coming up on the next episode of BackTrekking?
All right, so the next episode, we will be discussing the Voyager episode Scorpion.
The two-parter.
Yes, the two-parter, and I guess how it relates to the Crying Game, which I'm excited to find out about.
Have you ever seen the Crying Game?
I don't think so.
Do you know anything about the Crying Game?
I know it's a very serious film.
I know all there is to know about the Crying Game.
Okay. Wow.
And you'll get that when you watch the film.
Oh, okay.
Or if you're a Boy George fan.
Okay, so you're not like a Crying Game stan, is what you're saying.
No, I am.
Okay.
I have a great story about the Crying Game too, so
Awesome.
I will save that for the next episode. So join us then for that, and that is it for this week's BackTrekking. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you like the show, tell a friend, and you can follow us at BackTrekking on Twitter. And also, we're always looking for suggestions for future episodes, so let us know. I'm kind of tempted to try and go with a poll-based system, for picking future episodes. It's just the only problem is, like, if you're enthusiastic about something, that's great, but we can't always necessarily make it fit to something. So I guess maybe if we control it, like if we put a poll out, that'd be a good way to guide listeners' picks.
Yeah,
you think that would work?
Yeah, that's kind of a cool middle ground, I think.
Maybe we'll try to throw something together like that in the future. Gooey, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at GUIFame. You can also check out my show, Virtual Theater, which is a video game movie podcast. You can find that on Twitter at Virtual Theater X.
You can find me on Twitter at Caliban, K-A-1-I-B-A-N. And also, I guess this week I would point you to Enterprising Individuals. We have released the first episode of the 5th season, the 5th year of the show, on our normal places. And the season itself hasn't gotten rolling yet. This is a kind of a sneak peek to go along with Picard. But you can find that at EISTPOD. And that is it for us for this week. We will see you soon. And until then, keep on trekking.